Hello, and welcome back for the fourth episode of the Strange Water podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today's conversation is with Railelujah, aka Alan, one of the founders of the Railgun Protocol. In this episode, we go deep into Alan's background, his journey to Railgun, and how Railgun is providing some of the functionality needed to transform Ethereum from a speculative investment into the financial rails of the 21st century. But the meat and potatoes of this conversation is much less about founding a successful DeFi protocol and much more about building in an environment that is increasingly more hostile, not only to a specific project, but to this entire industry. This is a conversation about fighting for the world you believe in, about democracy, and about change, and about making things happen. And this is a conversation with one of those special people that are called to action when they see something that needs fixing. The type of person we should all hope to be. One final note. Please don't take any financial advice from this or any podcast. Ethereum and decentralized finance will change the world, but you can easily lose all of your money in the process. All right, let's get started. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a conversation with a DeFi co-founder, probably one of my favorite protocols, and that's both because of what I understand what Railgun and what Alan are doing and building, but more importantly because I think that what Railgun is building is actually relevant to the core technology we're building and actually relevant to making crypto something usable in real life. So super excited to have this conversation. Super excited for you to join us. And Alan, thank you so much for joining the Strange Water podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Looking forward to an interesting conversation.
Thank you. Before we get started, would you just like to give a brief intro and background about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Alan, one of the co-founders of the Railgun Privacy Project. I guess my background is more in the traditional finance space. Specifically in reinsurance, helping set up and maintain insurance funds in the Turks and Caicos and Cayman Islands and things like that. I got my start in crypto in about 2017. Tangentially heard about it from different friends in college and things like that well before, and I thought they were kind of crazy. But my background with crypto was really more on the trading side of things. I was really interested in trading my own money, and was after more beta, and came across crypto because the moves were pretty violent, as we all know, back in 17. Yeah, they're still chucking and jiving. I ended up going down the rabbit hole pretty aggressively. Found myself in a bunch of different Telegram groups and Discords and things like that, and was always really fascinated. I guess about the teams that were founding these projects and stuff, and I can still remember being in protocol chats and being oh man, these are the guys that made this protocol, and they're in here answering my questions, and was always kind of starstruck, I guess, from that, I guess I finally got the opportunity to be part of founding a project, and that's Railgun. So I guess my character arc is finance turned full degen, and now co-founder of a protocol.
I think something that is not well appreciated by people that are entering crypto as their first industry or first career is how you actually can just get in a group chat with a co-founder of perhaps the most important protocol or the most exciting protocol and really engage with them. And for those of us who reinsurance is one of those huge closed off kind of faceless until you're behind closed doors businesses. The true at scale beer business, which is where I came from, is exactly the same. And for people like you and me, this moment where you walk in, you enter the Aave Discord and you want to talk to the core developer, they want to talk to you, and that's something that's really treasured about this space, and I hope it just lasts forever.
Yeah, it definitely comes with its challenges. And yeah, for sure. Like it's definitely challenging, because people will at you, at, random times. I guess it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like building naked in front of a bunch of people. Like the open source technology thing. It's really really cool. It's a very fascinating pursuit. You get a bunch of people who come up and like want to contribute, and I think that's really cool in itself. So it has its advantages for sure, but it's definitely it definitely comes with its own challenges. Especially if things are difficult. The whole cliche like devs do something thing is always really it's difficult to deal with. Devs are always doing something. I guess if you will. There's ever research happening and people writing code and contributors coming in and out of the ecosystem, and so it's certainly exciting. And I think one of the things that's always been really weird about it for me is like you become like the oldest guy in the room like really quickly. It feels like I'm in my mid 30s. Yeah I'm like I'm a pensioner in like the world of like crypto, and some of these kids are really 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 young, which is really cool in its own right. And so like some people just come and have crypto as like their first job, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, that word you said, like it can feel really naked. It just is like bouncing around in my head because like that's absolutely true. And like the thing about being naked is it's like incredibly vulnerable and it's incredibly scary, but it's also like the moment matters because people are looking at you and people are like care what you do. And I think that is kind of like a dynamic and something that's crushing to a lot of people, but especially for those with the entrepreneurial streak and those who are really passionate about this space. I mean, it really just is opportunity, and it's opportunity to sink and opportunity to swim, but that's not something that really exists out in the traditional world today. And so like I think that's what's exciting for me.
I mean it's the kind of thing where like you can really kind of blaze your own path. I mean, like with Railgun, it's been really exciting because like we're building some pretty complicated tech. Like it's
Before you jump into the tech, how did you get in from like most of us entered the space trading our own, losing our own money, but how did you get from there to like passion about privacy?
Yeah, I guess that's a great question. So, like I mentioned, I was in a bunch of Telegram groups, and if you're a real degen listening to this, you'll know about Collabland bot and like token gated like Telegram groups and things like this. And so I really wasn't big on privacy before. I guess a particular event happened. A bit of story time, if you will. And so I was in a group, and it's a bunch of people who like share alpha, right? And everybody's like, I'm getting in on this token deal, or I'm getting allocation for this token, or like I heard this new coin is coming up and it's going to be cool. And people talk about like the interesting things that they're in. And so like at the time I was really into like on-chain options. My thesis at the time was like crypto is going to take over all rails of like finance, and people are going to use like crypto for everything, including hedging, right? and so like we're all like sharing all these ideas, and then I get a random DM from somebody in like the group, and it's like something to the tune of like, oh hey Rex, like how did you get into token X? And I was like, that's really weird. Like I've not told anybody that like I'm in token X, right? I'm not in that position, as far as the world knows. And I'm like, man, how'd you know that? And of course, Etherscan was shared with me, like this is your wallet, right? And I'm like, whoa, So I guess I had like that second epiphany of like how I think you have like two big moments in crypto. I started out in the centralized exchange world. And was trading on centralized exchanges, basically just doing a pretty boring trading strat, for better or for worse. I should have just held the tokens I was trading. ETH and Bitcoin at the time, I'd have made significantly more money than trying to buy up and down. But like you have like this big moment where like you finally hold your own keys to your crypto, right? And that's a really, really big moment. And then I think like the second big moment is when like you go and like you look at your like address on Etherscan, and like you could just see like everything that you've done since like the beginning of time. And like I had that happen to me, not like me having that realization. I was pretty dumb at that time, admittedly. But that's kind of where I really got aware of like how like um, crypto didn't have a lot of privacy. Naturally, there's things like Zcash and Monero and things like that that existed at the time, but yeah, like the place that I was doing business, if you will, EtherScan, doxed me pretty readily. So yeah, I think that's kind of the story there.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I think we've all had that similar story. For me, it was spending a year thinking I like was smarter than Ether, and like was maintaining these different identities well and this and that. And then actually at ETH Denver last month, one of my like very close friends who has like is an anon, and I met him in person, and the first thing he says is, "You are so sloppy on chain," and it was just that moment where it's like other people are watching, and whatever, for whatever reason, maybe they're like just trying to find alpha, maybe they're bored, maybe they have something against you specifically. Like it doesn't matter. The point is that it's there, and more so than that, that is not a bug. That's a feature, at least of Ethereum. And so I think we've all had that moment, but it's pretty incredible. But you had that moment, and your response is, "I need to do something about this."
Yeah, well, it's kind of like this weird serendipity, like it's so like the team getting together, right? Of like the initial like core contributors, if you will. There's naturally some pretty some pretty smart people in that group of people, and one of the things that they didn't really have was someone who had like soft skills, and so like I was basically approached, and people were like, "Hey, you like talking and like you should be on like the soft skills side of things, so like kind of telling the story and giving the why behind what we're doing, and being that sort of liaison to the outside world is really how I ended up getting on the team. And it was really quite funny because like initially whenever this was all coming together, I was being courted, if you will, to like quit my day job. I was, I had a baby on the way, and everybody thought I was like absolutely insane. And, my mother especially was like, "What are you doing?" Which is a bit of a classic story, really. But, yeah, I guess the thing that kind of like drove me to it was like that privacy from like a, just like a pragmatic standpoint of like, will crypto make it? Is just super important, just from like the pragmatic like business perspective. If we take in like we reframe like the crypto wars and the whole like going dark problem and all this around encryption, like privacy just has to happen in crypto. And then like the more I looked at like the ethos of the project and like how we were going to like I guess like contributors were going about it, I was like, yeah, this is like the coolest way. And like this is to me like what resonates with like my ideals of like no L2. Like at the time I was like, no L2s, no side chains, no roll-ups, ETH only, really ride or die on Ethereum. And so yeah, I decided to quit my day job and work full time on like contributing to this open source project.
Wow. So before we really dig into Railgun, can you just talk about like your personal journey from being an employee at like one of the like most sleepy, stable, just like when you talk about reinsurance, and for anyone who's not familiar, what reinsurance is like when an insurance company insures against an event, they don't want to hold all that risk. So what they do is go get insurance against the event. So and Alan can give you much more reason about how that, or much more information about how that actually works. But the point is that this whole construction comes out of like, I don't know, really out of like the age of discovery in the 1500s and like long treasure voyages. And so it's like very developed and institutionalized. And like, that's what Alan said he was working on, I don't know, let's say 2015. And now, 8 years later, you are, as you like to say, the chief janitor, but as I'll say, like a huge part of the heart and soul of this like super important DeFi protocol, and like part of that is required you to take like a huge leap of faith in both the protocol and yourself. And so to sum that all up, I just can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you were able to take that leap?
It had gotten to the point, so like reinsurance is a really interesting space. And it's very sophisticated, like old school financial engineering, right? Like, and the actuarials behind a lot of this stuff is really exciting and interesting. Well, okay, maybe it's not exciting, but it is interesting to me. Like I really love statistics, and I really, I found it to be really interesting, right? Suffice it to say. But I'd worked on it. I'd worked in the space for many, many years, and kind of had run into the highest echelon that I felt like I was going to get in that space, right? And that kind of comes with like that's it, like, oh, I've kind of like maxed out my career in what I'm doing, which probably wasn't the case, maybe I would have gone on and been who knows what, but I had kind of grown like I guess a little bit like disenfranchised with like working in that space, and I'd become like more and more interested in crypto. I think it's we all do. People who like go like full like heads headlong into the space. You kind of grow like more and more interested, and I started reading like more and more white papers, and found myself like reading the boards about like various EIPs and things like this, and like was dedicating more of my time learning about this new like crypto thing than I was like invested in learning about like controlled foreign companies and non-controlled foreign companies. And so like my interests in reinsurance just kind of waned, and it got to the point where I'd realized that I was more into it, or I guess more into crypto than I was into my actual day job. And I'd known some people who were in the space, working full time, and it kind of was just I guess I won't like, I really won't. Yeah, I won't really rule out like how much serendipity was at play there. It was just like weird timing, and like I was a bit of an opportunist, and I was thinking, why not? Why not do something different? The challenge with it is like it's a totally different business. You're working in Telegram with a lot of different people dispersed around the world. Like you're on Discord, chatting with people who have like really weird names. Like I don't really know how to like, it's really ineffable, like the stark differences in between like working, structuring pretty sophisticated, reinsurance positions for people, versus being on the internet working on a degen protocol. But suffice it to say, it comes with its own challenges, but it's really exciting. I find
you got to be like, honey, I can't help with the baby. Squiggle butt needs to talk.
Yeah, or I still remember like my parents were always like really giving me a hard time about like I'm a pretty boring person. I have a mortgage, a lease, and things like this, and so like I got a lot of like funny pokes at me like, oh, you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage in fill in the blank satirical token name. So I guess it's kind of a classic story, isn't it? It's someone, I think everybody who like leaves finance and goes and works in like magical internet money land gets a little bit of that jab, but I for one have always been a bit of a countercultural type, where going against the grain has been more interesting than the path of the well-traveled path.
Well, I've only known you for a little under a year now, and the idea that you're boring is laughable to me. But let's move on, and let's talk about Railgun. So just for the folks at home, it would be great if you could just give like a super brief elevator pitch on what Railgun is.
Yeah, I think for sure. I would totally suggest having like a hyper technical guest getting to the weeds of like EVM and like how the computation and all of that works. But suffice it to say, you have the Ethereum virtual machine, and you pay in Ether for people to do computation on your behalf, like in this decentralized virtual machine. Now, the problem with that is you have a decentralized public ledger of like all transactions that happen on Ethereum, and we could view this at least as plebeians. I'm sure some people call and view the blockchain directly on their laptop or something like this. But you can go on Etherscan and arbitrarily look at everything that's happening on that public ledger, and it's pseudonymous in the sense that it's all like 0x addresses happening to be doing these things. But as we all know, we fast forward to today, Ethereum's being used pretty regularly and pretty aggressively by a bunch of different actors to do a whole bunch of different things. Whether it's simple swapping of assets, sending tokens back and forth to each other, all the fun degen activities that we enjoy. And we kind of have created an ironic, perfect surveillance machine. And I think that comes with its own challenges, right? Like I can go and look at Aave, a lending protocol, and verify that the loan to value of like the contract is what I expect it to be. And that the collateralized nature of a backed stablecoin, like I can go and look on chain and verify that, yep, there's the ETH, it's backing it, it's in the contract that I'm expecting it. Or
it's not only that you can look it up, that is the cool, incredible, different thing about Ethereum. Like we can't have these bank runs that are happening in TradFi on Ethereum because like there's no panic created by this like shadowy assets or whatever. It's all on chain, it's all audible.
Yeah, but this comes at so there's like this severe disadvantage to that, and that there's like wholly transparent like insight into your individual interactions with these, and ultimately your balance of tokens, right? So you could think of this as like a so for example, if you were to you and I were to make a transaction, like let's say that you and I, we go out for drinks or something, or we go out for a dinner, and you're like, yeah, no problem, we can split the bill. I swipe my card, and then you send me tokens on ETH for, maybe cool, just pay me an ETH or DAI or USDC, whatever it is, right? I could then go, I will then go to Etherscan and proceed to judge you of like all of your transactions, like, oh, okay, yeah, he's into this, man, he holds these tokens and this.
A lot of miladies, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely do. I don't. Do you? I certainly do that. Anytime I do a transaction with another individual, I can't help myself but like peruse their transactions and like snoop.
Definitely true that like every single, especially when I find out a real life friends like Etherscan or ENS, like I go back, and I figure out like how sophisticated they are, how much they're worth, and like that's everything from a privacy like embarrassing problem to like a real life safety issue.
Right, exactly. Which creates a whole like it's encryption is security, right? And without it, when you have like wholly transparent access to somebody's bank account, because that's effectively what your Ethereum address is a bank account. You store value there. When you have like whole like transparent auditability of that, there's a lot of inherent risk involved. You have a lot of like, even when it gets to like the sophisticated part, not like, oh man, Rex has a lot of money, I'm gonna rob him for his crypto kitties. Something like financial engineering side, like being able to look and see that someone has a loan, and know exactly, where they're going to get liquidated and try to push the price against them. Like this kind of thing happens. There's certainly a lot of challenges involved when you have like, wallet side transparency. And so I guess like if you think about it just from like an overarching ethos of privacy, the point or like the pain point that Railgun is trying to solve is a really kind of like tough balance, because like we want to be able to provide like wallet side privacy for crypto users, but also like maintain that like third party auditability of different dApps that exist on the ecosystem, because that's really important. Like the auditability of like money supply, if you will. Like this is really, really important. Like, can I go and look and verify that Aave is acting as it should can I go and verify that when I want to swap my tokens on Uniswap, like that they're gonna happen. It's gonna happen in the way that I expect, like this sort of thing. Like, so being able to maintain like that DApp transparency along with like wallet side privacy is definitely a really difficult balance. But that's ultimately what Railgun is trying to do, which is, you know, build wallet side privacy.
Incredible. So that's a perfect segue. So can you just like briefly talk about like just real basics, like what is Railgun? How does it work? How does like a user interact with it? And then maybe with a special focus on how is Railgun built to provide privacy, but also maintain the like transparency and auditability at the application layer.
Effectively, Railgun is a suite of smart contracts that exist directly on chain that are designed to allow users to deposit assets into a private address and then transact those arbitrarily in DeFi. So if I want to take and swap tokens, if I want to stake tokens or buy NFTs, whatever it is, you can perform arbitrary actions in DeFi using this private balance of tokens. And so the way it works, just from like a high non-technical view, if you want to learn more technically about it, you know, go at Kai and, you know, the different people contributing to the code. But from a high level, what you do is you deposit funds into the Railgun smart contract. Those can then be transacted by generating a snark proof, and you basically verify anonymously that you own these tokens and have the right to spend them. And you could have additional transaction steps on top of that. So you could generate a snark proof that I own these tokens and I want to transact them in this certain way. The smart contract verifies your snark proof is true, and then you can, and then those are, transacted in DeFi how you desire. So, for example, if I want to send tokens from my private balance to Urex, I could do that. You know, so I can generate a snark proof that I own at least 100 DAI, and then I could send that to you privately. And so the cool thing about that is like Railgun effectively, so another smart contract sees, is just another smart contract on Ethereum, right? So we don't like hide like that there's someone swapping tokens on Uniswap, let's say. It just hides who the actor is. And so you could verify that like there wasn't some sort of like malicious attack. Like it doesn't like make that transaction private. You could see that if 100 DAI goes in, 100 USDC comes out, and the transaction happened as it was supposed to, right? So you still have that auditability of the DApp, but you just don't know who the end actor was. And I think that that's a really, really cool thing. And I think the other thing that's really interesting about Railgun is that you have like the third-party auditability of your transactions if you so choose. It's all just encrypted to your private key. You can take and dox those to people if you so choose, right? And that's really where the ethos is of the project, like giving people like self-sovereignty over their transaction data.
Yeah, and so just to like walk through what it actually looks like on chain, like let's say that Alan and me and let's say Tetranode are all interacting with the Railgun contract, right? And Alan puts in 1 ETH, I put in 100 USDC, and Tetranode puts in 1,000 ETH and 1,000 USDC. So from on-chain perspective, you'll see one smart contract, or maybe a suite of smart contracts that contains 1,001 ETH and 1,100 USDC. Alan, you will be able to send in a snark, which is really just a digital signature that says, I own this 1 ETH. I want that 1 ETH to be sent to this address. And the Railgun contract will verify that and then send your 1 ETH. And now like your balance according to Railgun is 0. But that cannot be like understood or figured out by anyone on chain. All they can see is that the master Railgun smart contract dropped 1 ETH. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So Railgun effectively is a, you can think of it as like a multi-actor smart contract wallet. So very similar to how like, let's say something like a Gnosis Safe, right? This is effectively a smart contract wallet, where you have like a special program where people can do a multi-sig, right? So we can take an all sign to do transactions. Well, this is a very similar concept.
Yeah. So maybe if like, in our future world where DeFi is like finance, maybe like a Gnosis would be a type of like special institution that is about creating like coordination at the wallet level, where Railgun is like a similar kind of institution, but is focused on creating privacy at that level.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Just to follow up on your comment about how you can share your private keys if you want, I think one of the things that a couple months ago I reached out to you and to ask you about is that you've created something akin to like accountant or like viewer keys, where you can share like read-only keys into your smart contract, so that people like accountants or like financial institutions or the government who needs to be able to verify what you have can do that securely without leaking all your information or giving them access to your assets. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. Giving them the right to transact, which would be really bad, right? So yeah, in the code base, there's a thing known as a view key that you can take and distribute to people, which is it's an immutable right to view the transactions. So, like you said, for example, maybe you want to give your accountant or the right to view your transactions, or maybe you have like let's say you're a fund and you want to trade privately. You can give it to your risk team, and they can monitor the transactions and make sure that you're gonna you're trading appropriately, not too degen for their liking. But we're going a little bit more sophisticated than that. Actually, a lot of the contributors have been working on like compliance is a pretty big focus for the protocol. So making sure that people can, because ultimately what we're after is like a real world adoption. So institutions and businesses and real people wanting to use this, and so real people, for example, want to take and file their taxes, right? This is a pretty important thing that people do, and so we're going to be releasing pretty soon a export functionality, which will take and export a CSV to Coinly for you to be able to take and just do your taxes like you normally do. And yeah, we're also working on some pretty cool, we just broke ground on a scope of a recursive snark based compliance tool where you can arbitrarily prove your balance against like different accumulators of addresses. So let's say that there's a particular naughty list that you want to prove that you're not a part of. You can do that with this like new tool. There's a lot of things that you can do in privacy that I think people probably underappreciate, right? I think that like there's this like straw man assembled against privacy where it's like bad actors are out to use it, but I think you can really have your cake and eat it too, and have like compliance functionalities and things that like prove that you're a good actor, and like know that your transaction isn't from some sort of like sanctioned body. I think it's just a matter of like building those tools and like giving people the capabilities.
Yeah, well, and I think even on the flip side, like this doesn't only have to be a, hey, I'm not a terrorist. It can be, hey, I have passed KYC. I am in this part of institutionalized or accredited investors, and because of this, I can have access to these kinds of opportunities without doxing myself. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really important things to do in compliance, like partially because of the risk to the builders and the DAO and the team and all that kind of stuff, but also because that's like where the real business opportunity is, and like that's where the real challenges are today. And so I want to move the conversation into that realm, but before we pivot, is there anything else you want to just talk about Railgun implementation, just kind of like details to make sure that we've covered the bases?
No, I mean, I think I've probably talked until I'm probably too much on a whole myriad of podcasts on like, what Railgun is and how it works. But, the short and skinny is we basically built smart contracts that mimic Zcash in Ethereum and other EVM compatible chains. It allows you to transact privately. I mean, like, there's hours and hours of content on like what Railgun is and how it works for sure. And we're pretty easy people to get a hold of, so we can always get in the weeds in my DMs for sure.
Cool. And I'm a big believer in it's like X for Y, and I think that you put it perfectly, right? It's like Gnosis safe, but for privacy, and I think that's very clean. So let's move the conversation into something a little more interesting, and I think that is like around compliance, and more specifically around the the regulatory conversation we're having. I think that the second in this industry, because we're like such PTSD babies, the second you hear anything about privacy on chain and transaction level privacy, people's minds go to Tornado Cash. And like, if something looks like Tornado Cash, we are going to have a problem. And so, personally, before you say whatever you say, I think that's kind of like a small brain take, and I think that there's like a lot of like nuanced things that happen with Tornado Cash that are worth digging into. But before I just like let myself go off, I would be like super curious to hear your take on what do you think are the big takeaways of what happened this summer with Tornado Cash, and how are you taking those lessons and making sure that Railgun doesn't suffer, the similar fate to, an equally as impressive and important project?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tough. What happened with Tornado Cash, right? It's really kind of unfortunate because it's a bit of a bad take. I'm really interested in following the there's been a couple of interesting legal what's the word I'm looking for here, like suits, if you will. People are out there in the world suing on this. So you have like Bankless. There was a really interesting legal action taken by Coinbase, of all things. I think they should change their name to like Coinbase, because they're really pivoting pretty aggressively against like the man, if you will, which I think is really cool. But then you also have like the Coin Center actions, and I think it's really kind of it's a really tough question, right? Because we kind of have a if we look at like the precedent, the rules are pretty clear. Code is free speech. People can take and talk about encryption and talk about it in an open source way, and this was decided in the early 2000s, right? There was the Bernstein case, and fundamentally they decided that code is free speech, and just because you write something down doesn't make it bad. You can talk about mathematics with whomever you like. And now we kind of have like and now you have like this yeah. Don't multiply together too complicated of numbers, right? You'll get in trouble. So no, I mean, all funnies aside, it's a pretty serious topic, and I think that the overarching, if we zoom out from like Tornado Cash, like we're having a really big moment in terms of encryption, and it's kind of been bubbling up for about 20 years. We have, if not just like Tornado Cash, like we had like you remember that case where like the feds were like saying to Apple, like, hey, you need to decrypt this phone for us, so we can like snoop on this guy's files. And so we have like a really big question being asked about our right to encryption. Like, can we use encryption? Like, we've established that it's fine to talk about it, and now we're kind of on like this next question, which is like, yeah, okay, we can talk about this really complex and cool moon math, but can we use it? And now it's getting even trickier because this question's gone without being addressed. Initially, like a lot of it was based around like, hey, can we force these third parties to decrypt the information that's on the phones that they build? And now it's peer to peer. I mean, like never before, like have we been where we are right now, which is like we can spin up really strong encryption as individuals, like really, really good encryption. Zero knowledge is mighty fine. And so I think it's a really tough question, right? And so I'm very fascinated to see like where this goes. Like, does it go all the way to the Supreme Court? I know that law takes a while to sort out, but I'm very fascinated to see like, do we have a right to use encryption, especially in peer-to-peer crypto? I think the answer is yes. I believe like as a sovereign individual, if you will, like a free individual, like we can transact and do things privately. That's not to say that we should be up to no good, but we should also, have the right to privacy. And so, like, how do we think about this, like, on a protocol level? Like I think we just talked about. We built, we built in like view keys. We built in different ways for people to export tax files, and contributors are continuing to build on different like compliance tools. The one that I'm most interested in is this really cool recursive zero knowledge technology that allows you to prove things about your private balance and do so without doxing yourself. So like taking and like blindly proving that you're not a bad actor. And I'm very curious to see like where the DAO goes, and like whether the DAO wants to build other tech around that allows people to further approve other things. So I guess to answer your question, like we're after the like individual ability to dox what they choose and what they and keep private what they want to keep private. And I think that's like the normal and rational state of finance, right? I think that's what people actually desire in like their financial lives. It's just kind of been demonized in crypto.
Yeah, I think in crypto we're dealing with a lot of problems, and in this particular conversation, I think the biggest problem we have is that the people who make the rules are not only like entirely uneducated about what we're doing, but the only people that have showed up to educate are the ones who are like screaming about how we're all scammers. And like honestly, they've got a point. It's hard to not recognize that they have a point after SBF and after 3AC and after like the whole Genesis like scam, and I think that the unfortunate reality is that like our industry creates some extremely loud noises, and the people who make the rules have no idea what's going on, and like that is a recipe for disaster every single time. And I don't know what to say to people when they say like, well, was Tornado Cash used by North Korea to hide the money that they've stolen? Because like the answer is yes. The answer is like undoubtedly like that did happen, and I don't think that I'm not like proud that the technology that I've dedicated my life and my career to is like a huge part of that. But that, I don't think that means you throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think the answer is you build tools that solve these same problems, but like still can achieve the goals that we needed to. And that's why I'm so like bullish on Railgun and so bullish on you guys, is because I think the answer to that is building tools with compliance and opt-in levels of you build like tools with perfect privacy and then opt-in like layers that people can peel away based on like the actual real world requirements in that moment. And then yeah, so I can totally see a world where it's like you have Railgun, the government or your bank or whatever like might force you to reveal your assets. And you can choose to, and then things move forward, or you can choose not to, and then maybe you don't get the loan or you go to jail or whatever. But like I can finally see, which I couldn't see with Tornado Cash, a construction that allows privacy to exist on chain.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess you kind of got to appreciate from like the tech standpoint of things, like like Railgun and like Tornado Cash are pretty vastly different, and like not only like the architecture but like their use case. So like suffice it to say, like if you've used Tornado Cash before, like that it's basically a one-off, get in, get your secret, and then like claim your tokens on the other side and like discard the secret, right? And it's very clear, in at least in my opinion, that like Railgun's not built for this, and you're not going to have like the same the same architecture. It's just not efficient if you're trying to do that kind of thing, like generating a bunch of different wallets, and you don't have that same like excuse of like, I deleted my old Railgun wallet and I do this like every day, because that just doesn't add up at all, right? right? You can have like this private EOA and like live in it and like create like this long-term record of like your transactions. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like some people need to see that, and some people don't. So for example, like you just think about like the areas where you need KYC and you don't need KYC, right? So like if I am just paying my, I don't know, the dude mowing my lawn, like he doesn't need to have like, full purview of like my entire financial history. He just wants to get paid the money associated with mowing the grass. If I want to get in on a particular, high profile investment deal, there's certain different rigors involved with that. And so like creating like nuanced privacy is really, really difficult, but that's kind of like the aim that we're after, like this really flexible, tech stack that allows people to, prove various levels of, of like credential, I guess, is kind of like the ultimate like perfect dream futurescape, if you will, of Railgun.
Super cool. One of the things I want to talk to you about is, and I guess this is kind of a two-track question, but I do know that during the Tornado Cash saga, that one of the things that you did was like got your butt out to Washington, D.C. And I know that because like we talked a little bit about strategy, and I was able to like at least put you in contact with somebody who does this kind of work for traditional business. But so my two-track question is like, one, as you like kind of engage with the process to make sure that the values that we care about and the things that we're building are protected in whatever capacity you can, what are the takeaways that you have of like actually affecting change? And two, how do you think about doing these things when Railgun is not a company in the way that we think of a company, but is this like decentralized DAO? And at the end of the day, you're a contributor of.
Yeah. Like, so like I don't control, like there is no like Railgun team, there's no like control, like there's no admin or whatever. Like it's just a bunch of people who are, evangelists contributing to like this open source tech. And albeit I don't contribute in code, I do, like you said, contribute in other ways. And one of the other ways that I contribute was, whatever the whole Tornado Cash thing happened, and there was a lot of noise around like privacy and like, like on-chain privacy. Is it good? Is it bad? I felt kind of compelled, to get involved. And so I messaged some people that I know at, the Blockchain Association. I talked to the guys at Coin Center, which both of those organizations are very friendly people. And, they're always willing to, try to engage and educate. And that's really, really exciting. And so, I ended up going to DC to talk with a bunch of people. I talked with Hill staffers. I've talked with senator types. I talked with some people who worked at the Office of Foreign Asset Controls and people who worked at FinCEN. And the key takeaway, I will say, is that we very frequently see these people as like adversaries, like in this very like headbutting kind of way. And so like frequently the conversations are like talking past each other, and I don't think that's any good. I don't think you win anything by doing that, like talking at someone, right? This is a very big problem, I think, in like our just like broader ecosystems engagement with people. So, and I think that riles them up, and that's why like I think. Am I going crazy? Did I see like on Twitter that like Elizabeth Warren is creating an army against crypto or something?
I have to say, because this episode will be out in like 2 or 3 weeks, but what my understanding is that she put out the ad that said that she was doing an army of anti-crypto people and then took it down and now has a new one out that's a little less aggro. But yeah.
It definitely. But it's kind of it expresses like the tensions in between like this ecosystem, who people are really passionate about crypto, right? And I don't think that like I'm very much so not of the mind that like people who work in Washington are like the I guess I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, like the enemy, right? I very much see them as people who need to be engaged and educated. Because whenever you go and whenever, at least in my experience, when I went and talked with these people, they were quite friendly, willing to listen. Wanted to try to understand what crypto is about, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, all of these different things. And I think that we've kind of like rested on our laurels as a community, and so like as a just a broad core value call out of crypto, like I don't know that like is there's certainly people involved, and I don't want to like take anything away from the people who are working really diligently in DC to talk about crypto in a good light, but like we've also broadly speaking kind of rested on our laurels and let people like I don't know, SBF and Alex Mashinsky like talk about like crypto and be like the dudes in Washington. And so yeah, I don't really know where my story is going. So like but like that's that.
Very much resonate with what you're saying, and I am a huge believer that this industry looked at the story of Facebook and the story of Google and like took away that what happened was these kids created technology that changed the world, and then it took over the world, and then it got so big so fast that the government just kind of had to accept it. And now it doesn't really matter what the government thinks because they're not going anywhere, and like anything that happens is on the margins, right? I think that's the takeaway that our industry took, and I think that is such a childish, incorrect takeaway of what actually happened. And I think that people who have been in reinsurance or been in, like beer conglomerates, like understand that laws are set because like people play ground game. And what that ground game is at just the very table stakes level is the type of work that you are doing, which is like you show up and you explain to people what is happening and why it's important and why whatever they're hearing is maybe not right, and you help educate them. But if you're super serious about like making sure that the government isn't coming after you, we have to remember that this is America and like real people and our roots, and like what you actually do is like, I'll pick on someone. Frax should just go create real jobs in a real constituency and have those real people call their real representative. Like we should be showing like our representatives not by like creating like more and more spectacular threads, but like by actually showing them that their constituents want this technology because it'll improve their lives by like just going out and doing it. And I think that, it's the nature of our industry. We're all incredibly online, and I don't really have a problem with that, but it is incredibly frustrating to watch the conversation around government and technology and like regulation, and also then watch that nobody is showing up to play.
Yeah, you just it's actually not as, and I'm a nobody. frankly speaking, like I don't have like tons of money. I'm not like paying senators off or anything crazy like that. I'm just a guy who lives in America who wanted to go and like get involved. And I think that that's really, really important, is like if we don't like show that like this is something that we're passionate about and care about, then like like the narrative that like the government will push all these jobs offshore is totally true. We're either like a victim of circumstance or like a master of our destinies, and I just want to choose to be the latter. So I'll go and talk to these people, myself, and see what happens. Will something good come of it? Who knows? But I'm gonna try anyway.
And something you said earlier really struck me, that your comment was that Coinbase should be called Coinbased. But I can't stop thinking about it because are there actually any other crypto companies that went public? Genuine question, I'm not sure.
I mean, like we can get in the weeds of that. Like, there's MicroStrategy and things like this. But like where do we want to draw the line on that? But
that like the one company that did go public, and like while they built their business on crypto, like really chose to embrace like America and corporate, like the corporate structures that have like created this system, is like now in this moment of crisis, literally the only actor that is positioned to like throw like elbows, And I think that there's like something profound and some sort of lesson in that, where it's like by choosing to dissociate ourselves from the system and reject the system, and like by like embracing DAOs, it's like that's so incredible for decentralization, and it's like a really good liability shield for those who care about it. But like we've also given up our seat at the table.
Mm. Yeah, well, I don't think that's the case, right? Like individuals still vote, right? Like we could, I think we can kind of, as, general individuals go and, kind of just, I find it's just important to go and be engaged. Like talk to these people, write them letters and call their offices and leave voicemails and, it doesn't really take a lot of time. It's not like you have to like pound the pavement like 24/7 and like give up your day job. But I think it's definitely worthy to like, and not just like crypto, right? Whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be like just crypto. Like, what other things do you care about in life? Like just broadly speaking in politics, like you should remember that like these people are public servants. Like they are there to serve you.
No, I appreciate the pushback, and I'll take it. The point that I was just trying to make was that we don't really have a corporate presence, and I think that is felt in our lack of like presence on the hill. But I think you're totally right.
Like that's how do you judge how many people are on GitHub? Like, I mean, yeah, there's metrics and stuff like this, but like, how do you even judge how many people are working on a particular open source project and things like this? It's really quite difficult, because you look at like GitHub commits that get squashed and things like this. So it's like, oh, who's actually, like sometimes you'll see like different projects where it's like there's, you look at the GitHub and it's like, oh, there's like 4 people, pushing commits, but like rest assured, there's not like 4 people writing that code. Like there's tens and tens and, if not hundreds of people contributing to.
No, for sure. And I mean, even on like you can hit this on 2 levels, and like one is like let's pick MakerDAO or any of the protocols that are over $1 billion, right? And it's by the time a traditional company would reach that scale, like they would have government relations people, especially in a new industry that needs. And so like that's I think something we're lacking. But what you keep bringing me back to, which is right, is that like ultimately the power lies in the individual people, and it's about like choosing to use your voice. And honest to God, I would probably roll my eyes at you a couple weeks ago, but I'm currently going through this thing at my I live in like a very large condo building, and they're just like making really questionable decisions at the HOA. And like what I'm realizing is that no one has called them on their shit for years, and I'm sitting around and everyone is like around like the free cookies and pizza complaining about how stupid it is. And it's just so clear to me that no matter how upset everyone is, like nobody actually wants to get involved. And I think that,
do you think it's like apathy or like difficulty to like sway opinion? Which, by the way, defund the HOA. I don't have one in my neck of the woods.
Yeah. I mean, the HOA I have less of a problem with for like actual apartment buildings, because like I don't want to have to worry about my sewer. But but yeah, I think that especially in America we have this frame that democracy is the ideal, and like everyone participating and voting is the ideal. And honestly, I believe that. I truly believe that. But like there's this huge gap between a democracy where everyone participates and engaged, and like the real way the world actually works. And like whether or not it's at the country level, or like these people that live in my building genuinely care, because the stupid thing that it started this whole thing is going to result in all of us getting this huge assessment that we shouldn't have to pay for. So like they definitely care, but also they don't want to get involved. Like they barely are willing to vote for me, and that's after I said like fine, like I guess I'll run for the board, And I think that democracy without engagement like might be like the worst kind of government, and that is like kind of what we have.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. That's true. Yeah, I hadn't really considered it that way, but it does seem to be that way. You know, there's definitely people who are engaged, but like, you know, maybe it's like apathy, maybe it's, you know, like,
Well, the real problem is like the people that are engaged got engaged because they got mad, you know? And that's why I'm getting engaged because I'm mad. But what does that result in? That the only people that are there to make the rules have an agenda that's fueled by rage, or they're just straight up like taking money, you know? And I don't like a lot of the dysfunction in this like society makes sense to me.
yeah, we've just solved it right there. That was that's the actual truth right there.
Oh, listen, man, identifying is easy. Solving is a whole nother challenge.
Yeah, people get that needs to be a thread on Twitter or something.
Yeah. So definitely kind of want to wrap this up. I'm a huge believer in keeping podcasts tight, but before we play ourselves out, just like kind of wanted to get your like takeaway and your key thoughts on like where we are in terms of this society and like the regulatory maelstrom that is coming towards us, and like what we should be doing right now, whether that's like we as like participants or leaders of a DAO, or whether that's like we as just like like traders with like money in this space, or us as like Ethereum zealots. Like what should we be doing?
I think we first have to like appreciate like why we want privacy like transacting. And I think the most important thing to me is like making people understand like that privacy is totally normal. It's like the most normal thing. Like if we distill it, like forget about like dark pools of like of stocks being traded, or like the other sophisticated like you know, financial machinations. Like just like think about a simple debit card transaction, right? Whenever you swipe your card, the person looks at the little Ingenico terminal and they say, approved. Yep, here's your coffee, right? And you go about your way, right? They don't learn everything about you. You don't learn everything about them or their store, right? This is like privacy like 101 in finance. And that's like the most important like thing, right? Is that we have like this firewall in between our wallets and I guess our bank accounts, if you will, in traditional finance. And so like first like understanding that like privacy is a normal state of affairs and is, you know, expected by rational actors in finance is like the first thing that like I just want to always stress whenever I meet people. It's totally normal. You should have it. You deserve it. And then I think if we look at like the broader landscape of privacy, I think it's certainly not black or white. It's very much so gray because the state of privacy is really bullish when it comes to the tech. Like never before has it been easier to like build really great privacy infrastructure. Like there's all sorts of really cool, new and interesting zero knowledge technology that exists. There's, you know, Halo 2 that just came out, so now we don't have to have trusted setups. We have all the, I don't know, the myriads of Plonk variants that exist out there. Like the tech stack is great. But I think that the I don't know. I don't want to sound like too tinfoily on the way out here, but I definitely, I guess I will. But like, I think that like the state of the union around like privacy and like just generally, yeah, like the state of the union around like surveillance, if you will, in like modern society is really bad, right? It's really hard to argue against the attack on privacy because it's justified under the guise of going out and getting the bad guy. And like this sounds like a really great thing until like you're deemed to be the bad guy. And I guess people don't really appreciate that like surveillance isn't about making the world a better place, right? It's about making sure that people who have, you know, I guess it's not really about like making the world a safer place. It's probably more, at least in my opinion, like making sure that others aren't doing things that you don't want them to do while you're the one that has the stick. And people frequently say that like they don't have anything to hide, which I think is really bad too. I think that that's like saying like I don't believe in free speech because I don't have anything intelligent to say. Or perhaps like more accurately is like saying I don't have a single thought or have never said a single thing that might be misinterpreted in the future and put me in a weird spot later down the line. And I think that it's, I don't know, a lot of the arguments against privacy are pretty vapid and pretty privileged. And so like I would tell people to like appreciate that like all of the societal values that they take for granted and like as like obviously true could be deemed an eccentric threat to the powers that be. And so like we should be fighting pretty aggressively for like our right to privacy, especially when it comes to financial privacy, because I think back to the American Revolution. If we had this perfect surveillance machine where people's transactions could be tracked pretty accurately in real time, we'd probably still have the queen on our money. And so like we should work really aggressively to like maintain financial privacy, because it's I think it's really inherently important to a modern and free society.
Man, you said a lot of really good things and like important reasons to. Fuck, man, you said some good shit. Hold on, I need to think of what I'm about to.
Well, just think. I like. Okay, so think about it this way, right? Like we have to look at the broader ecosystem, right? The world, right? The real world. Like all of the things that we say are like true about the world and like are obvious and are the correct way of thinking weren't always the case. Like women's right to vote wasn't always a thing, right? Like, do you want to, like people have the right to be gay? Like, not everywhere in the world. Like, you want to have premarital sex? Not if you're in Southeast Asia, So like, we kind of got to take it all with a grain of salt and understand that like every societal value that we take for granted in a free society can change very quickly.
For sure, for sure. Everything you say could not be more just on point. And I think that the deeper that I get into this industry and the older I get and just like the more life punches me in the face, the more I realize that like the American experience is like a very unique one, and like unique in good ways, unique in bad ways. But so much of what is like incredibly powerful and important about crypto is like just not relevant to the American experience. And the best examples until recently, right, were inflation protection and like privacy or protection against a government that is like gone crazy, gone rogue, right? And I think that on January 6th, 2021, I happened to be on the phone with Wells Fargo. I was like talking to them about moving some money over on the like investment management side. And I was watching the capital be overrun. And I just remember saying, look, this is before I found crypto. And I said, I am only going to move over with you if you can help me get at least 10% of my net worth outside of this country before the next election. Was it buying property in France? Like, I don't care. I just like, I need to know I have an escape plan. And like, for me, that was because like, I recognize that this country is changing so fast and so volatile that like the things that I used to count on, like don't, that aren't like, we can't count on them anymore. And I think that this like whole privacy thing is just one of those things where it's like you have to sit here and say smart things like with comparisons to the First Amendment and stuff to like really grind it into an American's head. But like what Railgun is doing and what you, Alan, are doing like on behalf of Railgun and on behalf of our industry and making this case for in front of the government is God's work. It's like what we need, because that is the point of crypto. And if we don't do this, then we're just as much risk as like the Russians were when like that situation unfolded, as the Iranians are, as the North Koreans are, as anything. And if we don't have privacy, like what are we doing here?
I agree. Well said. We should have it. You deserve it.
Well, and that is why I'm so thankful and so honored that you, Alan, and the Railgun team are bringing it to us. So won't take up any more of your time. I so much appreciate the time and the conversation and the learnings and just everything. So, Alan, thank you so much. You want to tell the people like where they can find you, where they can find Railgun, anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we have a great Telegram group. It's called the Church of Railgun. It's I guess a bit sacrilegious, but all in good fun. We have Twitter. You can follow Railgun Project. You can find me on Twitter as well. We're pretty easy to find. I guess we're pretty heavily doxed, building privacy tools, so you don't have to.
All right, Alan, thank you so much once again. Just super appreciated, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.